Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the AI Rebels podcast. We're excited to be here. As you can see, it's just Spencer and myself. Today, we are excited to just discuss a few things that have popped up recently and we have thoughts on. And we like to do this every once in a while where we can just kind of, talk to each other and actually discuss some ideas that we've been thinking about.
Mhm.
To start things off, I think I have a ringer here of something in the news that happened recently. Spencer and I were just talking about it before this, but there was a deep fake here. I actually pulled up an article on Forbes. Let me share this because this is wild. Okay. So these fraudsters, can you see it all right?
Yeah.
These fraudsters cloned a CFO or director's voice and were able to convince a bank using this deep fake to wire $35 million.
Oh man.
And the money's gone. There it goes. They're trying to figure out where it went. But this is just an insane example of maybe the dark side of AI and what it's capable of, but also kind of hilarious at the same time.
Yeah, no, and I think that bringing things like this up is important because I love AI with all my heart. I'm incredibly optimistic about it, but like we got to be honest about some of the potential downsides as well, so that we can, act to mitigate them, whether through social mechanisms or better technology. And I think more than anything, this shows that a lot more social mechanisms are needed. And that's part of what
Right?
makes me optimistic about AI is the potential to strengthen those social bonds, whether through necessity, which, and you can go back and forth whether or not that's a case of like, oh, people, creating a poison and then selling the cure.
Yeah,
And
right.
I personally don't take that perspective, but like, there are those that do. Because to me, I think that this speaks to a deeper problem within the culture, which is that honestly, digital signals of all kinds are already very easy to manipulate. The only thing that's changed is how widely accessible tools are to manipulate them with. So, for example, the example that I like to point people to as to why, in the long run, I'm not that concerned about AI generated misinformation or people, falling for AI images. In the early history of photography, there was kind of a scandal, if you will, called the Coddingsley fairies. I believe I've mentioned it before on this podcast, where essentially some little girls were playing with cardboard fairy doll cutouts in their garden, and they happened to have a camera, and they took some pictures of the fairies. And the way they posed them, it looked pretty realistic. And so it got posted in the newspaper, and, people all over were like, oh my gosh, photographic proof of fairies. This is amazing. But the whole time it was just, no, exactly, right? Like, blew their minds. Of course, the whole time, like, these little girls are like, oh, we were just playing.
Nailed it. Yeah.
And eventually, it comes out that, like, it's not fairies. It's cardboard cutouts. But the point being is, like, we have been dealing with misleading images and misleading information for a long time. And the only thing that we have to do here is update our biases regarding digital information particularly. Up until now, we've treated it largely as, base truth.
Mm-hmm.
For a while there was like, the adage that you shouldn't trust anything you read on the internet.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that messaging kind of wore off over time.
Right.
Which I think has been for the worst.
Yeah.
Because
Oh, yeah.
you don't need AI to generate misinformation. Anyway, sorry for going off on a little diatribe there. But just had to get those thoughts out.
I think you're so right. And that's one of the reasons when I saw this, wanted to bring it up, is because it's like, we're an AI podcast, right? We discuss AI and the amazing impact it's having on the world.
Yeah.
But I think it would be selling ourselves short to not recognize that there are downsides, right? There are new
No,
risks
exactly.
that we have to adapt to. And I think people often think AI groupies, we'll call them, people who love AI, are blind to that. And some are, for sure. Some think it's the
Mhm.
answer to everything. But it's not. Like, just like any
No,
tool, right? A hammer, you can smash your finger or you can use it to build a house. Like, it's amazing. But every tool has that side to it, but you're more likely to fall prey to it. You're more likely to smash your finger with a hammer if you're not familiar with it and you haven't used it before. So I think that's kind of my call here is like, yeah, it's a tool. Of course it can have negative impacts,
no,
but it's
exactly.
way less likely to happen if you're familiar with it and you know how to use it. And obviously
Yeah,
these
exactly.
thinkers did not.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I don't remember who said it, but playing off that idea of like, the tools being able to hurt yourself with, being able to hurt you as well. Any properly useful tool has to have some capability of harm. Because
Yep.
otherwise it's not a paradigm changer, right? Like there has to be some level of harm, some level of right? Because and this is this is an opinion that is not necessarily the science on this. Let me say it differently. The science on this opinion is not necessarily set in stone right now, but I've become more and more convinced by the idea that the way that we have, progressed from each level of social psychological development as a species, developing greater and greater intellect and greater capacity as humans, it comes down entirely to our tool usage. As we have created more complex problems for ourselves, we have created more complex tools to solve those problems. Because that's just, fundamentally, we have a drive to survive. And the way that we do that is by being incredibly adaptive and incredibly smart about using our environment. And AI tools are just the next generation of that. Technology is the way that we get to higher levels of social organization.
Yeah, exactly.
The full view is slightly more nuanced than that, but for the podcast, I'm comfortable making that claim.
We'll stamp that. Yeah, exactly. I think along with this, like a flip side, another article development that I saw here, let me share this. In China, they've recently come out and kind of published their findings here. They call it Agent Hospital, but it's an
Yeah.
AI hospital that they're basically training right now with the plan to, use it to treat patients. And it's in a few days they're able to treat 10,000 patients, which I don't know if it says in here. In a different article I read, that would take the same number of doctors 2 years to do, and they're diagnosing at a 93% accuracy rate, which is better than some doctors.
Sorry, my cat is in the sink and doing something he's not allowed to do.
You're good.
Come here, bud. Stop trying to drink sink water.
Bear.
You can discuss AI hospital with us.
Have a seat. Anyway, I think this is an example where I think some people maybe freak out at this idea. Again, coming from the view that you're unfamiliar with AI, would I actually
Mhm.
trust my health to a machine, right? Am I going to answer
Mhm.
these questions this machine gives me and trust that the diagnosis it gives me is accurate and then act accordingly? Am I going to take the medicine that it prescribes, right? Like, I I don't know. That's a big shift in
I think
paradigm, and I think that's what's going to hold back progression. I think is just people's trust.
And I think that this will be a really interesting kind of psychological test for a lot of people, because it'll come down to how much do they actually trust doctors? Because ultimately, in order to deploy AI and a widespread use in American medicine, like, it's going to have to go through some degree of approvals by the FDA, by, doctors organizations, et cetera. Right. Whether that's, a formal, I'm not sure exactly of the, particular legal framework regarding these things in particular, but, whether that's a social approval of just like, hey, doctors organizations vet it and approve it, or it has to be, something that's legally done through the FDA. I'm not sure. But point being, it's going to have to go through some level of approval process at an, officially in some manner. And then it's going to come down to people like, do they trust AI, or do they trust doctors, or does AI cause them to now mistrust doctors? Which raises some interesting, logistics problems for the future of how do we manage this transition? How do we get people to trust this technology? And I don't have all the answers right now, but I know that one thing is just talking about it like we are right now.
Yeah, exactly.
I've become to believe that more and more strongly, that a lot of people's fears is based purely on ignorance and misunderstandings of what AI is. And that's not to say that all the fears are illegitimate.
Right. See $35 million wire transfer.
Yeah, exactly. But like there's so much upside here that we need to keep in mind, and we have to be clear-eyed about it, right? Like, we got to keep an eye on the potential and push this space and push people towards that potential. Yeah, I think that language models are basically sacred technology.
I agree.
However you want to define sacred, like, I think it meets the definition.
It checks the boxes.
Yeah. Speaking of language models, this is now a good time to talk about Claude artifacts. All right. So these aren't necessarily super new, but it's the first time I've gotten around to playing with them. I finally got around to playing with Claude artifacts this morning, and they are sick.
You've given me the itch. I want to play around with it now.
You should. They're awesome. So this morning I was needing to edit some JSON data for something that I'm working on. And I did not actually want to go do it in the editor where the data is saved, because like it's a really poor editor. So I was like, what if I just copy paste it and create an editor for it in Claude? And it turns out that it works really well. Awesome. Shockingly so. So as you can see, it took like a number of revisions to get it to where it's at. But the fact that I was able to do this within, maybe 30 minutes of prompting is pretty incredible, because now I have essentially like a full-fledged app, but just for my specific little use case. So watch this. I can paste JSON data in here. Where did I have that? Oh, that's right. It's right here. So I had GPT-4o format the JSON data, because I personally prefer 4o. I think it's still a little bit faster on stuff like that. Okay. And so I can just paste that in there. I hit import JSON data. All data imported successfully. And then I have all my restaurants right here that I need to edit.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and like it's really impressive. And I was shocked at how good Claude Sonnet is at just picking up exactly what it should do from literally just snippets of error messages that I gave it. This is not a full error message. I gave it just a snippet, and I was like, I know what I did. I accidentally removed the get data string function, and just fixes it. Like, it's,
oh my gosh.
I don't know how much of this is in clever architecture in the way, the model is interfacing with the code editor, or how much of it is trained directly into the model. But either way, Anthropic did something like very, very cool. With artifacts, and I would highly recommend that you go check them out.
Seriously. I'll definitely have to. I mean, what other use cases do you foresee for artifacts?
Another one that I saw this morning, let me pull it up. There is author slash engineer, Simon Willison. Love this dude. He's awesome. I want to get him on the podcast, but he hasn't responded to
Shout
my
out to
DM.
Simon.
Simon, come on the podcast, please. We're going to clip that one and post it for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
But this was one that I saw this morning, actually read as I was finishing up my own little thing. He was needing a box shadow. So we got Claude to build me a custom one-off interface for fiddling with box shadow properties, which is really cool because so essentially what you have here is you've got, this little shadow around the box is the box shadow. And it's a good effect for a few different things within design. We won't dig into that because that's kind of boring to what we're talking about. But look, like it's just, you can adjust the offset of the shadow. You can adjust the blur radius. You can, adjust everything that you need to adjust within CSS to create these box shadows. And then it spits out the code right there. Like all you have to do is copy and paste that over into your CSS.
That's awesome.
Like and
you can see
this
it live,
probably
right? It's like you adjust it and you see the preview live.
Yeah, exactly. And it also shows you the code as well. So that if let's say that I want to go turn this into a permanent app on my own computer, or, let's say that I want to host this somewhere so that it can be used by internal teams at my company. All I need to do is just copy and paste this code into a React app and it's ready to go. Like that's it.
That's so cool.
I'm geeked about it.
So what was, obviously this was your first time using it, so maybe there would even be, additional time savings in the future, but like what was the savings like for you here?
I'd estimate that it probably saved me, 45 minutes to an hour. This task, like building this out, is not too complicated. It would not have taken me that long myself. But it definitely saved me time. And I can absolutely see where I would use this in my workflow to build components for, whatever I'm working on.
Yeah.
Because the loop between generating it and reprompting it is a lot faster than, writing this all myself.
For sure.
Maybe people who type faster than me, maybe they won't find the same trade-off.
Yeah.
But that's where I'm at. And also I think that it's just, a lot of this is boilerplate, and a lot of boilerplate you just kind of have to look up and copy and paste over anyways.
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense.
And so it's incredible to have this this type of rapid design tool. And OpenAI, you gotta have something that matches this. Code interpreter is no longer
what you got.
Code interpreter isn't good enough anymore. Artifacts is just head and shoulders better. And that actually brings me to another point about OpenAI, which is that if they are planning on mostly competing on product rather than model strength, they really need something like artifacts, because I can see so much potential for this feature.
That's
and
amazing.
I'm sure that Anthropic does too.
Yeah, and they beat OpenAI to it.
Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see over the next 6 months what happens with Anthropic, OpenAI, what they morph into, because they're morphing so fast.
It's just going to keep going faster and faster. And there's new video models coming out every day. There's new capabilities for existing video models. People who are betting against AI to continue improving are going to be pretty upset with what they find.
I think so. Yeah. And it'll just start creeping into more and more areas.
It will.
Yeah.
And I think that exciting. People should just embrace it, because the sooner that you do that, the sooner that you can start figuring out exactly where it fits into your life and exactly where you think it should fit in to life. Because it's not going away. There are people who are like, oh, we can totally turn back the clock. We can ban AI. It's not going away. I have 12 language models downloaded to my hard drive right now. Like, are you going to come take my laptop away?
Right. I know. Well, and that's what I was going to say is like, no government or business currently like worth its, what's the saying, worth its salt. It's like no one's going to do that because then you can't compete in the world.
No, exactly.
Yeah,
Like
you think the United States is going to ban AI when, China just created an AI hospital? Like there's
exactly.
absolutely no way that's going to happen. And so I think this brings us back to like our initial discussion of like the more exposure you get, the more you use it, like you'll be able to avoid the pitfalls and like the dangers. And that's like great. But like the big point is the sooner you use it, the sooner you'll get the benefits. Like if avoiding the pitfalls is enough, which it's not for me, like, man, like, great, yeah, avoid the pitfalls. But like what really gets me to use it are the capabilities and everything it can do. So
no, exactly. There's I didn't learn much from playing too many video games in my life. But one thing I did learn from playing Destiny 2 at a high level is that the only people who ignore, the meta that develops, the strongest strategies that people start using are idiots. It's people who want to lose but feel good about losing.
Yeah, they want to die on a hill.
Exactly. Yeah. Like they are way too excited to die on a hill. And it's like, why don't you want to win?
Right.
The game has changed and you have to adapt. And I understand why that's hard for a lot of people to accept. And I understand why that's a little bit of a harsh truth for a lot of people. But it is the truth. And you can't do anything but react to it. Like for me personally, Claude Artifacts, if I were still focused on just being a web developer, Claude Artifacts, that's a lot of my job right there.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, as soon as AI showed up and I realized what it could do, I started trying to upskill.
Yep, exactly.
Because I saw this coming, and now I'm trying to tell other people too, like, hey, like this is coming, like learn to use it so that you're ready. Because honestly, there's a really bright future ahead of all of us. But there will be some growing pains along the way, as there always are with growth.
Exactly. I'm excited to see where it goes. Every month it's different, so we'll see what next month holds.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Anything else you wanted to cover?
I don't think so. This is always fun. I always like just, riffing on stuff with you. So
same here.
Always good. Here, I'll
we need to do more of the episodes, I think.
Yeah, it's fun.
Thanks for watching, everybody.
Thanks for watching.